Good evening, everyone. My name is Jason Bosky. I am the Almighty Sigma of the Micronation Republic of Boskasia, a micronation that is located in Highlands County, Florida. It is an enclave there. I am completely surrounded by the community of Loretta, Florida. And this is my weekly address or periodic address that will occur at least weekly. So what we're going to be talking about here is Boskasia, the things that are going on in Boskasia, as well as what is going on in the rest of the world, particularly the United States, because what happens in the United States will affect what's going on in Boskasia. So just to keep everybody on the up and up here, obviously I am not responsible for a real nation. Micronations are not recognized by any governing authority within the sovereign community, as it were, such as the United States, Canada, Mexico, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we, the micronational community, we do our best to be as sincere to the idea of running a nation as we can. So you will hear me talking about things such as a constitution, because it is the Republic of Boskasia, and it'll be a constitutional republic. So I will need a constitution. That has not been written yet, but it will occur at some point, and I will be using this platform to solicit feedback on what people think should be part of that constitution. I will also be talking about what are the ideals of the Republic of Boskasia. What are we trying to cultivate as far as the culture of the Republic? Also, we'll be talking about economic things having to do with Boskasia. What is Boskasia going to do in order to finance itself? How will we do that? What are we going to do to make sure that we can get the things that we need? Are we going to have internal industry? And you think that this sounds like it's kind of hokey, right? Because I just said, it's not real. It's not a real place, but it is an opportunity for people to learn about what goes on at a macroeconomic level within a country. Because I will be talking about it throughout the time that I have this experiment, this project, as it were, which hopefully will go until the day that I die. So that you can see things like GDP and currency exchange rates, because the Boskasian Bosker is in the process of being developed, possibly as a crypto, possibly as a stable coin crypto, possibly as something along the lines of what the FRB does, or the Federal Reserve Board, I should say, which is you have cash in banks, and you have the churn that goes on. It's called M2, which is like U.S. Treasuries and things like that. And we have already done a debt issuance. We did that denominated in U.S. dollars. And we'll talk about the difference between doing something denominated in a currency other than your own. Argentina knows all too well the problems associated with issuing debt that is not in your own currency. It makes life very, very difficult for you if you run into some kind of problems. But we did do this initial one in United States dollars. So that makes it a lot easier for everyone and makes it a little bit more sound for everyone. We'll talk about the taxes that could go on within Boskasia. For instance, not too long ago, we did an announcement, a communique, if you will, where we announced a 35% export tax. So anything that gets exported from Boskasia will have a 35% tax to the Treasury of the Republic. Why do we do that? Well, because there's no one to buy anything. You can't have a sales tax. The income tax, you could do that. But the main export that Boskasia has now is labor. And so an income tax, a labor tax, it's all really the same thing at that point, or an income tax and export tax, because labor as an export will be exported or will be taxed. So you got things like that going on. And like I said, what happens in the larger world affects Boskasia. So when you have things happening in the United States, where I do maintain my citizenship, I'll be talking about how Boskasia would react to things like that, how I feel about that as the head of state and the head of government of a micronation, what I think the consequences are of something along those lines, what the United States is doing, and we'll see what people think. That's what's going to go on here. So it's somewhat, you can look at the Boskasia piece of it as tongue in cheek, and it's real easy to do that because it's a micronation. I've got 10 acres in Laredo, Florida, that I have declared as my own sovereign nation, in the process of obtaining 20 more adjacent to it, or if you want to look at it in the terms of a governmental body that I'm looking to annex into Boskasia to triple the size of the Republic. So, I mean, we can look at it as tongue in cheek, and I can get it if you do, but it will provide an avenue for me to talk about the things that are important to me. And because if it's important to me, it's important to the nation. There are only 2 citizens of the Republic of Boskasia. And so if it's important to me, it's important. And since I'm the only voting member, it's important to me. It's important to the nation. You just have to keep in mind, and this is the only time I'm going to talk about it like this, is in this first recording, this pilot episode of the podcast, so to speak, the weekly address, that I am going to treat this as seriously as I can, as if it is real, as if what's going on in the United States is foreign affairs, and I have to have, as a member of the family of nations, so to speak, or at least pretend family of nations, I need to have an opinion on what's going on. And also, this is also going to give me an opportunity to possibly have some experts on who understand something about the way the world works, and use this platform, if I can get those people on here, use this platform to discuss things that are going on in the world. And my interests are not strictly related to politics, right? I mean, every nation has a culture, right? The official science of the Republic of Boskasia, I'm going to get into it right now, is astrophysics. So, or astronomy, however you want to look at it. I like to think of it as in terms of astrophysics. One of the reasons that I obtained that land out there in the first place is because it is close enough to a dark sky preserve at Kissimmee. I believe it's State Park over there. That is a dark sky preserve. So I figured getting that close to a dark sky preserve, and with the closest town being Sebring, Florida, which is a dozen miles away, it's probably going to be pretty dark where I am, because Sebring is not exactly, it's not small by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not as big as where the consulate of the Republic is, Lakewood Ranch. So you have this ability to see the sky at night, which I haven't had since when I lived in the Georgia mountains. So this is something that's going to be a big deal. Like I said, I want to build an observatory out there. 2045, the solar eclipse is going to have, I think, 5 minutes of totality in Boskasia. So that's important to me. That's something that I want to take care of. We will have other things like the official cuisine as it stands right now is Cajun because of the use of spices in Cajun cooking, which I find to be my favorite of all of the cuisines that I've ever had. Hungarian was a close second, and some people have even said that Hungarian should be the official language of Boskasia, but I don't speak it well enough to even teach somebody that, so that's not going to happen. So you got that. You got all that going on. This is the only time that I am going to not be completely serious in what I'm doing as far as talking about Boskasia in reality, right? There's always going to, it's if you're a professional wrestler, which by the way is the official sport of the Republic of Boskasia. If you know anything about professional wrestling, you know about a term that's called kayfabe. And what kayfabe is in professional wrestling used to be, it's not as big a deal anymore. It is the idea that you have good guys and bad guys, and those good guys are good guys all the time when they are in public or not. They are maintaining their character, and the bad guys are maintaining their character in public all the time as well. And so starting with episode 1, because I consider this the pilot, not really episode 1, starting with episode 1, we will be in full kayfabe on the Republic. I will be the Almighty Sigma, which is the title of the head of state and the head of government that my daughter bestowed upon me as the head of the Republic. I can't argue with that. That's a fantastic name, particularly coming from a Gen Alpha kid who said that I'm Sigma, which is, if any of you know me already, know that in her phone, she has me as So Not Sigma. So the fact that she called me Almighty Sigma, I thought that was quite cool. Of course, she did a PowerPoint presentation to me to explain to me why she should have her own province to rule within Boskasia called Kirkland. Costco, shout out to you. They decided, she and her friend who did this PowerPoint presentation to explain this to me, by the way, she's 9. They decided that the leader of the head of state or the head of province, or however you want to look at it, and the head of government for the province should be called the Slay Queen. So the Almighty Sigma ranks above the Slay Queen, and that's all I care about. So that's what's going on there. And the philosophy or religion, however you want to look at it, for Boskasia is called Boskaism, because of course it is. So you've got Boskasia, the land, and Boskasia is not a land, it is an idea, is to butcher Odin from Thor 3, what is that, Ragnarok, that's what it was. So Boskasia is not a land, it's a religion. However, Boskasia is a place. Also, it is in, like I said, it's in Loretta. Boskasian refers as the adjective to what is in Boskasia. Boskaism is the philosophy or the ideals surrounding the way that I look at the world and the way that I want to live, the things that I value in life as far as a philosophy goes. And somebody actually asked a friend that when she was talking about me doing this Boskasia, oh, what do they believe in? Well, I'm going to talk to you about that. It won't be this episode. This is just the primer, so to speak, the pilot. See if people are interested in this or not. And then you have Boskaism, like I said, and then you have Boskaic, which is the adjective surrounding the philosophy. So if you do something that's Boskaic, right, you're following the principles of Boskaism. Boskaism is the national philosophy or religion of Boskasia. And if you are doing something having to do with Boskasia, or you are a citizen of Boskasia, then that would be Boskasian. So that is what we're doing here. And I am going to have a lot of fun with this, because those who know me know that there is nothing in the world that I really enjoy on a day-to-day basis like having a microphone in front of my face. I have a face for radio. People tell me I also have a voice for radio. And so we're going to find out whether or not all of that is true, see if people start listening, and we're going to go from there. So that is the introduction of this. And so from here, I'm going to step over to the initial episode, so to speak. I'm going to go ahead and talk about Boskaism, because it is part of the reason that I'm doing this. When I did this, I created a flag with three horizontal stripes: purple, teal, and black. Each color represents a particular tenet of Boskaism. And in the middle of the teal stripe is a Bosk, B-O-S-K. You can go look it up. Don't look it up on Urban Dictionary. That's not going to help you. Although if you want to look up Bosky on Urban Dictionary, feel free. B-O-S-K-E-Y. Go ahead and check that out. You will crack up. But a Bosk is basically a bunch of trees, in the middle of the prairie. So you're driving down, especially if you're from Illinois or now that in Florida. You're driving along, you see these prairies, fields, whatever you want to call them at the time. I probably fields because prairies seem a little bit more wild to me. But you're driving along and you see these prairies or fields, and you see like a group of 2 or 3 trees out there all hanging out together, almost like Ents if you're into Lord of the Rings, that are trying to figure out where they're supposed to go from here. And it's just out there, and it's like, why are those? What caused those 3 trees to just be there? That's a bosk, right? That is what I have thought of as a bosk for as long as I can remember. The word bosque, I think it is, in Spanish, is forest. And so let's see what it is. You see, bosque, a small wooded area is the basic definition of it. And so can't complain too much with that. A thicket of bushes, a small wood. There you go. And so that's why that's the flag. And then you've got the seal. The seal is actually I think it's the seal that's going to be the icon for the Republic of Boskasia weekly addresses. That has the sun on the upper left side. It has the constellation Orion on the right side, and I hand drew that, so it's not perfect. And then it's got 4 words in Latin around the circle: logica, intelligencia, curiosia, misericordia, which is logic, intelligence, curiosity, compassion. So keep those 4 words in mind, because those are the starting 4 words. And then on top of that, along with the 3 things that the stripes in the flag are, purple is, I'm going to make sure of this. Hold on one second, because I want to make sure that I get it right. The purple is contemplation. The teal is wisdom. The black is independence. And then the last 3 of the 10 basic ideals of Boskaism are magnanimity, integrity, and relativity. Now, a lot of people aren't going to like relativity, but I'm going to go through each of these on why they are what drives Boskasia. So we'll see how long this goes, and then we'll go from there. And along the way, just because I'm a little bit disjointed as far as my thinking goes, and I can think of something, I thought of this and I'll do this. I'm going to try to not do that much editing with this. I know that you can do a lot of editing, but part of what is going to make this me is not doing that much editing. If I just completely bumble something, then I'm going to delete that or try it again. But for the most part, I am just going to let it go, and maybe I'll take a little bit out if I think it's dumb. But for the most part, it's just going to be what it is. And so let's talk about these things, and maybe this will get us through to 30 minutes. I'll get it done. I'll post this somewhere, see if people are like, yeah, you should keep doing this, Pascal. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. We'll find out. And especially after episode 1, when I'm actually in full kayfabe about being the almighty Sigma of the Republic of Boskasia. So logic. Why is logic one of these 10 things that are so important to me that I have to have that as part of Boskaism? Because logic is a thought process, right? Logic, and I talked about these 4 things in the Declaration of Independence for the Republic. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick, because it was really fun. No, you know what? I'm not going to pull it up. I'm just going to shoot from the cuff here. Logic is a thought process of saying that it requires evidence. It requires a linear or mostly linear path to get to conclusions. It tries to eliminate assumptions. Anything that is taste gets pulled out of logic. Now, there's nothing wrong with taste. Don't get me wrong. If you like filet mignon or you like New York strip, that's fantastic. I might like something else. I might like brisket, as barbecue is my thing, or at least making brisket is my thing. But that there is no logical way to say, oh, the filet mignon is better than the brisket because the filet mignon is more tender and it comes from a part of the cow or the cattle that does not get worked. So it is objectively better. No, there is no objectively better in those cases. That's a matter of taste. There are things that you could think of as taste that are not really taste. If you believe in things like human rights and things like that. But for the most part, if you can draw a line using logic to get to a conclusion, right? And oftentimes the only way to beat out logic is obfuscation and confusion. And so those are things that I do not like. And I avoid them at all cost. And the other thing that I avoid is I avoid being wrong, but I try to realize when it's my own taste, which is, taste really is just a light form of bias or prejudice. And so, anything that has to do with something along those lines, I try to avoid when making the logical argument. And I appreciate when somebody really points out that that's where I've gone. Now, I may argue that no, it's not, and here's why I don't believe it is, but that doesn't make me right. And that's one of the things that it's not one of the tenets, but because I couldn't figure out a word for it. But I don't ever believe wholeheartedly that I'm right, but I never, ever believe that there's no possibility that I'm wrong. And that is one of the things that logic does, is because there's almost nothing not man-made that is 100% logical to its end. So logic can get you most of the way there, but at the end of the day, there's going to be some unknowns that make it possible that you're wrong, right? And that's part of science, right? Science is always, you provide new evidence that I'm wrong, and that's great, or that's fantastic, because we learned something, as opposed to being steadfast and no, this is right. Can't do that. I can't do that. So logic gets you most of the way there. It gets you to the point where you feel like the possibility of being wrong, or a better way of putting it, not fully understanding, is you get that to minimize, but it's never gone. And that's the thing; it's never gone unless you're dealing in postulates, which means that you just basically just made up rules. You're never there, but logic gets you most of the way there. Intelligence is important because intelligence is critical thinking. Intelligence is synthesis of information. Intelligence gets you to the point where you can draw conclusions that make sense, right? It's taking that logic and getting to the next step and figuring out how the things that don't fit, because the world is messy. And in a messy world, logic isn't going to get you there, because there's always confounding information, right? There's always a different point of view. While you will not hear me talk about my truth versus your truth, what I will talk about are fact patterns and perceptions that can lead to, I don't want to say distortion of facts, but definitely different views of those. And what intelligence does is intelligence allows you to synthesize all of that and determine what you think is the appropriate way to handle that and conclude from that. That's how I see it. And that is important enough that is something that I continue to teach my child, is being able to take information and put it together like that. And then the other thing about intelligence is seeing things that don't seem related and finding how they are. Pattern recognition. And then part of the problem with pattern recognition is seeing where there might be a pattern, but there is no pattern. There is no relation, right? Because if A happens, then B happens. There's, 4 possibilities. One, A caused B, or if A and B happen, let's put it that way. A caused B, B caused A, C caused A and B, or there is no commonality and it's just coincidence. And a coincidence thing, this is a flying spaghetti monsterism, is that global warming is 100% tied to, inversely proportional to the number of pirates. As the number of pirates on the high seas has gone down, the temperature of the earth has gone up. Do they go together? I'll let you be the judge. Third one, curiosity. Never stop learning. Never stop learning. Never stop looking around at the world and saying, wow, why is that? How does it do that? Why? That should never, ever cease. I am a personal believer in systems. I believe that as far as activity goes, that if you had perfect information, you could predict anything. Now, the quantum people will tell me, no, you can't, sucker. You're right. I'm not, but I'm also not trying to predict when a quark is going to pop in and out of existence. I'm looking at a much more macro level. But I firmly believe that if you have perfect information, that you can see how the system is going to work. But you never have perfect information. So curiosity is always getting you more information about the world around you. One of the things that, should I ever get Joe Rogan rich, and I'm not going to bring his name up again, although in a twisted way, I would like to surpass his success. If I ever get that kind of money, I am going to be devoting at least half of it to figuring out how to mimic photosynthesis. Because if you could use the sun, carbon dioxide, and water to create glucose or fructose or sucrose or any other sugar, turn it into energy source like that, that's game changing for everything. That's game changing for the atmosphere. That's game changing for Venus. Just things like, but that's a curiosity thing. I'm an accountant by trade. Whose specialization over the course of the last 10 years has transferred from financial accounting, and I'm still good at that, don't get me wrong, but to derivatives, financial derivatives, and interest rate risk management. Why am I thinking about synthesizing photosynthesis? Right? Because I'm curious. Why do I sit up at night trying to figure out a statistic based upon what's already being tracked that can give you an idea of a basketball player's decision making? It's curiosity, right? And the thing with me, and the thing that I'm trying to instill in my child, is that curiosity is the way. It really is. It's one of the ways anyway. Never stop learning. never stop being curious. Once you stop being curious, the world just becomes bland, I think. When you stop being curious about things, you stop caring, I feel like, and there's a Ted Lasso thing about don't be curious, not judgmental. And I agree with that completely, because learning about, even if it's just learning about other people, learning why they are the way they are, what they know, what they don't know, asking questions, you don't want to be annoying, but asking questions. That's, to me, that's the epitome of being human, is wanting to know more than you need to know. Right? So, and the fourth one is compassion. I struggled at first between compassion and empathy. Empathy has been the hot topic for a while now, at least. I heard about empathy years ago from Dungeons and Dragons, of all things, but empathy has been something that's been talked about a lot, particularly since therapy speak has become a huge thing, and people talk about, you want to be empathic, you want to be an empath, you want to do this. But empathy can only go so far, because empathy is, it's kind of like, it's really, I'm going to butcher it, but kind of like, putting yourself in someone else's shoes. And you can't really do that. You got a lot of assumptions to go on there, which is going to go back against your logic thing. But empathy also ends up, and I'm not saying empathy is bad. Don't get me wrong. Empathy is not a bad thing. But for me, empathy is not as important as compassion, because empathy relies on your ability to relate. And I can't assume that I can relate to things that go on in the world. I'm a white man. I can't relate to the experience, not really relate to the experience of an African-American man or African-American woman. I'm straight. I can't really relate to the experience of a gay man, or it's definitely not a lesbian woman. I am the same gender as the sex I was born into. I can't relate to being trans, right? So that stymies your ability to be empathic, right? And then being all those things, right? And then you want to throw in, while you're at it, throw in the fact that I was brought up Catholic, which Catholics consider to be Christian, but sometimes people down here in the South don't consider it to be Christian. Nobody really empathizes all that much with us, because unless it's something that's dealing with another person like us. Right? Oh my gosh, your father died. I'm so sorry. Right? People can empathize with that. But if you have something going on between a straight man and a gay man, the tendency, particularly, and I'm not gonna shy away from it. I'm a liberal. I have liberal beliefs for the most part. There are some things that liberals would say are not particularly liberal about what I believe, but I adhere to a lot of what liberals believe. And one of those things is that white men have a lot of privilege. And because of that, there is a tendency to empathize with the one that is considered to be struggling more. All right. And I get it. I absolutely get it. But that doesn't leave me with much empathy. And so the fact that happens is not something that I'm upset about, but it is a sign of the bias that people just inherently have. And then the people who do empathize with me often are biased against the other person. You don't see in I don't want to call it confrontation, that's not the word, but in a dispute, let's call it, people pick sides. Very few people actually empathize with both. They pick sides based upon who they relate to more, right? And that's not necessarily wrong. I mean, that's just human nature. And there are a lot of people saying, "Well, I don't do that." Don't go there with me. We're talking enough people do it for me to feel comfortable saying that. Compassion, on the other hand, is wanting to be of service to another person who is in need of service. And it doesn't matter whether it's, "Hey, do you need me to make you dinner, or bring you dinner, or do you need a hug?" or anything along those lines. Compassion is more about being of service without judgment, without bias. That is much more important to me than empathy. So I'm not saying empathy is bad. Empathy is not bad. But compassion to me is much more important. Because compassion to me is agnostic of the characteristics of the person. And you see it now with people that are being harmed by the United States policies that are going on, and a lot of them voted for the current administration. There is this desire for some people, and sometimes it's me, to say, "You didn't think about this when you voted, did you?" But the reality is, I don't feel that way. I don't want to feel that way. I want to help. Even if somebody brings it upon themselves, if somebody says that they're fine and don't worry about them, they'll be okay, and then they fall in a hole or something like that, or break their ankle, or or tip over a motorcycle and break their wrist. It's not useful to go tisk tisk, "You did this." That's not useful. What's useful is to help them so that they are okay. Right? And for a lot of people know that that's a personal story there. My dumbass self doesn't know how to ride a motorcycle, but my ego got the better of me, and I took my cousin's kid's motorcycle. And even though I wasn't going that fast, I didn't know how to drive it. And I flipped over the top of it and broke my wrist. People could have been there and go, "Jason, you're so stupid. What were you doing?" No, that's not what people did. They called an ambulance for me and made sure that I got to the hospital okay. Took care of my daughter while I was there, because I'm a dumbass, right? That's probably right up there in the dumb moves that I've made in my life. Compassion is what was needed there. I didn't need empathy. I didn't need anybody to empathize with. Yeah, of course you did it, because, I understand ego gets a hold of you sometimes. Who cares? That doesn't mean anything. What I needed at that moment was somebody to call the ambulance, 911. That's what I needed. And so you got that. And then, so that takes care of the seal. Now you get to the flag, and you start with contemplation. Contemplation is curiosity on steroids, really, is how I look at it. Contemplation is really giving thought to ideas, almost like chewing the cud, so to speak, or ruminating, not ruminating like it's used in contemporary terms where you're overthinking something. That's not what I'm talking about. But if you think about a cow, right, or cattle, or any of the ruminants, actually, right, they have to chew their cud, and they eat the grass or the grain if they're a domesticated animal, and that's what they're fed. They eat that. It goes down to the stomach. It ferments. It comes back up, and they have to chew it up to go back. And so, but they do that when they're relaxed, and they do that you could almost think about it as doing it in a contemplative manner. And for me, contemplation is being able to sit with yourself and really giving thought to an idea. Thought experiments are contemplation. You ever read about Einstein and the thought experiments that he did in order that got him to, for instance, the general and special theories of relativity? They are amazing. They're absolutely amazing. And it wasn't until that I'd read about the thought experiments that I began to at least have a primitive understanding of relativity. But that's where contemplation comes in, is being willing to really think about it and you can use the term see it from all angles, but if it's an object, it's easy to say that. If it's a thought, it's not always easy to say that, but that's what you got to do, is really take a look at something and see it from all angles and dissect it and figure out how this idea would work, and when you're talking about what I'm teaching my daughter, and really Boskaism is really just about the values and ideas that I want to instill in my daughter. Contemplation really matters. It's really giving thought to things. And do I think this because it makes me feel good, because I believe it's justice? Or do I believe this because it's sound? Or do I believe this because it's punitive, right? It's not just always justice. It can be punitive that you believe something. But is that what's driving you? And then you got wisdom. And to me, what wisdom is it is taking the logic, taking the intelligence, taking the curiosity, taking the contemplation, and you take them all and you put them together into one. It's all of those added up. If you do those four things, then throw on top of it, you do have to throw on top of it a little bit of life experience too, because you need to experience things. Otherwise, it's just book learning. And there's nothing wrong with book learning, but book learning is not as it's good for informing how you make decisions, but it's not the only thing. Most people cannot ignore their experiences, but you have to be able to synthesize those experiences into what you've learned and what you know. And that's where the wisdom comes in. And that to me is what wisdom is. Long time ago, 30 years now, I drew a triangle in my early days of playing with data. And it was like the food pyramid, or like Maslow's hierarchy or something like that. The bottom of the pyramid was data. And then data synthesizes into information. Information synthesizes into knowledge. And knowledge synthesizes into wisdom. Right, so you take all of that to get to wisdom. The ability to make good decisions is, to me, what wisdom is. And a good decision doesn't always mean the most efficient decision, if you're thinking about it in terms of energy or in terms of fiscal responsibility. It is the one that does the most good for the least not good. I don't like the word evil. But I do like the word good. And to me, that's what wisdom does. But you have to have a look over a longer time horizon. If something is good today, doing good today doesn't mean that you have done good over the long haul. And the great example of that is, you feed the bear at Yellowstone. All right, you did good today. The bear is fed. Bear doesn't have to worry about it. But over the long haul, you have not done that bear any favors. Because now, by not doing the bear any favors, you haven't done people favors, because now the bear is starting to learn that people will give him food. And if the people don't give him food, the bear ain't us. He's not just going to go sulk in the woods. He is going to say, no, give me the goddamn food. Pardon my language. So that's an idea. That's an example of where you have to think about the long-term good as well as the immediate good. I'm not going to say reward. Reward's not the right word, but the immediate good. So, and then the third one on the flag is independence. And independence is, it sounds, you think about it in terms of sovereignty in the Republic of Boskasia, and intelligence begins to sound like, oh yeah, or not intelligence, independence is like, oh yeah, declaring independence from the United States. Go Boski, go Boskasia. That's not what I mean by independence there. What I mean by independence is free of influence, being able to make your decisions free of influence. Because people are going to try and influence you all the time. You'll see it in the news. You see it in media all over the place. Social media. I don't know that there's anything that is not trying to influence you in social media, whether it's the ads trying to influence you into buying something, or it's the posts that are trying to influence you into their belief structure. There aren't that many social media posts that have the express purpose of making you think, making you contemplate, making you go through all of these tenets that I've been talking about. There aren't many. But I try to post like that. That is how I feel that social media should be used, because I want an informed, intelligent, critically thinking world. I want to be able to have discussions with people that are not immediately, because of the influence that they have felt, are not immediately going to assume that because I don't share their beliefs that I'm the devil. And that's if they're on the other side, if they're conservative. And if I don't share all of their beliefs, if they're on the liberal side, that I am just a liberal in name only, or a Democrat in name only, if you're talking about the United States, right? Labor Party in name only, I guess is the other thing you'd call it. That is antithetical to me. That is exactly the way I don't want to be. And most of the people who are going to listen to this are going to be listening to it, having seen it from social media. I doubt that anybody's going to wander across this pilot episode of the Almighty Sigma's weekly addresses from the Republic of Boskasia on accident. Maybe it'll happen someday. Maybe people will start sharing this thing. You got to listen to this guy. And that would be awesome. And I'll bring you all with me for the ride, because that would be fantastic. But I'm not counting on it. I have a tendency already to get hyped up I don't want to say high expectations, but I get excited over things that are low expectations. That there's a small chance of it happening. It's almost the opposite of paranoia, where paranoia is, that's not really paranoia, but yeah, we'll use paranoia, although it's not the right word here, where you get very worried over low likelihood events. Because the damage done. I'm a banker, so I think of it in probabilities of default and loss given default. Low probability of default, but high loss given default will cause a lot of people to become extremely risk averse and spend a lot of energy trying to avoid that, even though not a lot of energy is necessary because it's low probability. I have the opposite problem in that low probability, high gain given default will excite me. That is a big part of the reason why I don't gamble that much, because I recognize that in myself, that the 15-1 shot, I am going to get very hyped up about. Those who know me know, and those who don't, who are just listening to it, you're going to find out now. I am a graduate of the University of Illinois, and I am very much into their football and basketball team, their basketball team more than their football team. Illinois can be a 12-point underdog. And if they make the first 3 baskets of the game, I am pumped. They are going to win this game. That is not realistic. But I know myself. I know myself well enough to realize that. So, that is wisdom. I think that's what I'm still on right now. Wisdom, right? Yeah. Know yourself. Be able to make the good decisions. And pay attention. Next up, magnanimity. What is magnanimity? Magnanimity is being magnanimous. This is maybe the hardest thing to achieve or to live of all of the things that are on this list of 10 that I'm going through. Because the opposite of magnanimity is pettiness. Right? You're being magnanimous or you're being petty, or you want to look at it as a spectrum. That's your spectrum right there. On one end is magnanimous, on the other end is petty. And our world relishes in the petty. It just absolutely relishes in the petty. Being magnanimous is very hard. Because a good example of being magnanimous is when is Lincoln at the end of the Civil War. It's like, no, I'm not going to punish him. I'm just welcoming him home. Prodigal sons type stuff. And petty is the people who wanted to punish the South. And I get it. I get why you'd want to. Petty is what caused World War II. Because after World War I, England and France and the United States were very petty with Germany. I mean, they broke up. They broke up the Ottoman Empire. They broke up Austria-Hungary. The Hungarians are still mad about that. And it's for 107 years later. And they did Germany hard. Because they're petty. We won. Now you got to pay. As a result of that, we got World War II. And there is a direct line like that, right? Magnanimity is so difficult because you have to be able to, I don't want to say forgive, but that might be the right word. It's not just forgiveness. It's not lording over or bullying someone, right? Being magnanimous is treating someone like an equal when they are not your equal. Treating them with that kind of respect, as opposed to, you will respect me, you will acknowledge me. That is antithetical to what I want to live, to what I want to teach, to the Republic of Boskasia. I can't do it. I cannot support that. Sometimes, I mean, yes, and sometimes I catch myself. Sometimes it's fun to be petty about things like that, you know, and I've lived my life in cases where I've been petty, where I will, for instance, if somebody is driving over and over to the lane, and when I used to play basketball full court, I would intentionally go up for a layup with my knee in someone's chest, and they draw a charge. I go, okay, and just give them the ball. I'm not immune to being petty, but I try very hard to not be petty. And that's what I am pushing for here, is keeping that magnanimity, right? hockey, end of a 7-game series. They are knocking each other out. They still shake each other's hands at the end of the game, or at the end of the match, end of the series. Because magnanimity requires compassion and, to some extent, respect. Next up is integrity. Integrity is doing your best to go with what you think is right rather than following the crowd. Being not so conditional on things. And that's hard. It's very hard to not be or to be full of integrity. It's very difficult. How do you do it? Right? That's the difficult thing. I said difficult like 3 or 4 times right there. It's not easy to go against your desire for fitting in, belonging. Although if you listen to Brene Brown, belonging does not have to get rid of integrity, but fitting in does. Staying with what you believe. But also integrity is being willing to move what you believe when confronted. And confronted is kind of almost feels like a violent word, so to speak. But that's the best word I can come up with. Confronted with information that is contrary. It's hard to do. Keeping with integrity is very hard to do. But it's important. It's important to me. It's important to me that I stay true to who I am. One of the things that anybody will tell you that I believe in is the free market. We will talk about that at a later time. But that is a very important thing to me, is the free market. Because the free market is balance. It's equilibrium. And there are conditions to reach the free market. And when things go against those conditions, I'm going to point it out. And I'm going to say, this is warping the balance. This is warping the equilibrium in ways that I don't believe are appropriate. Because everything affects everything else. You think of everything as, in some way, shape, or form, gravity. It has an effect on almost everything else. That's how I see that. And then finally, the last one is relativity. People hate relativity. People like absolutes. Because absolutism allows you to call somebody a hypocrite. Requiring absolutism requires or allows you to call somebody a hypocrite. And you can be a hypocrite. Don't get me wrong. But that's not what I'm thinking about when it comes to relative. When I'm thinking of relative or relativity in this case, it's if you steal bread to feed your family versus steal some earrings that you could have paid for, but you just felt like stealing it. Those are both stealing, but they're not the same. Right? It can be very easy to travel down that slope, that slippery slope of all of it is stealing. I push back against that. I believe that every situation needs to be looked at within its own condition. Lying to someone to spare their feelings about something that is insignificant in life is not the same as lying to cause somebody else to be punished for a crime. That is They are both lying. They are both just being deceptive, but they are not the same. And that's what I mean by relativity, is being able to assess that difference, being able to assess the effects as much as the action itself. And where you can, assess the morals of it, in that, are you saying this one is okay, but that one isn't, not because of what caused that person to do the act versus the other person to do the act, but because of the person that they did the act to is someone that you identify with versus the other one is not. Right? You have to be able to assess that too, because that goes back to the compassion. Because compassion is not just for one group of people. So, anyway, that is the end of this first recording. I will put this up. Hopefully you will listen to it all the way through. You won't think that it is terrible. You are welcome to send me an email about this, about what you thought, about the idea of doing this going forward, and the kayfabe idea of making this full on about in the voice of the leader of Micronation. And we'll see how well I do with keeping the kayfabe there. I think it will be fun. I think it'll amuse me, but I don't know how long it'll amuse me. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes. So email me, Almighty Sigma, ALMIGHTY SIGMA at Boskasia, BOSKASIA.org. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you would continue to listen. Let me know if it is worth it for me to distribute this to the podcasting platforms. Again, this is the pilot. This is the first address from the Republic of Boskasia. Thank you all for listening, and I hope that you'll come back. And if there's anybody out there who can write a national anthem or a song that not the national anthem, I have my national anthem, but if there's somebody out there who will write a royalty-free opening and closing number for me for this, that sounds a little bit like the theme to Battlestar Galactica, that would be greatly appreciated. So until next time, my name is Jason Boskasia, the Almighty Sigma of the Republic of Boskasia. See you next week.